What, you didn't think I'd stop at just one of these, did you? The Hatchetfield series has so many characters, and the episodic multiverse structure provides so many avenues for exploration. Different timelines offer different contexts through which to view the same people, lending greater opportunities to expand how we understand them. It's cool, it's my favorite aspect of how the series is structured. Of course I wasn't gonna only cover Grace Chastity when there's so much to work with, and I'm so deeply unhinged about the material. There's gonna be plenty of these videos, just you wait. You saw the title. Today's character is Tom Houston. Of the many multimedia installments of Hatchetfield, Tom has appeared in 4 so far. He's introduced as one of the leads in the musical Black Friday, and has further appearances in 3 Nightmare Time stories. He has cameos in Forever and Always and Yellow Jacket, and leads again in Jane's a Car. These are the stories we'll be discussing for today. Mostly the 2 leads, but I'm a completionist, I've gotta acknowledge the cameos. You know how it is. Get your foot on the gas, folks. We're taking a drive to Tom Houston land. Part 1. Great priorities, Tom. If you're unfamiliar with Hatchetfield, you're gonna have to bear with me because Black Friday has a lot going on. This thing has 4 interwoven storylines, and I'm really only going to be talking about one of them. I'll cover everything relevant as best as I can, but we'll be brushing past a lot of stuff here. Black Friday opens with an advertisement for the Tickle Me Wiggly doll, the new toy that everyone wants to get their hands on this holiday season.
This Christmas, wiggle with Wiggly. Wiggle, 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 wiggle your way through life.
It's a diegetic musical number and starts to play a second time for this couple in their car before it's turned off by this guy who doesn't like the musical commercial. The woman with this guy is Emma Perkins, sister-in-law to Tom Houston and also my best friend. She's on her way to Tom's place with her,
I'm Emma's boyfriend.
Well, we haven't put a label on it yet, so.
But we are intimate.
her guy. She's our exposition provider and the first impression we get of Tom. Last Christmas, Jane Perkins died in a car crash. Emma lost her sister and Tom lost his wife. Emma is not close with her extended family, having spent years entirely absent and only moving back home after Jane died, and in fact, she doesn't like Tom very much. Tom and his son are all Emma has left in the way of family, though, and she's looking to make up for years of distance and shortcomings by bonding with them now. She's anxious for this holiday get-together, aware of her poor reputation and not wanting to make a bad impression. Through this, Tom is built up as an asshole, someone judgmental and socially intimidating, but also someone grieving, someone Emma, our first point of contact, wants to connect with. The impression is this guy might be a little hard to like, but we want to root for him and his family. Tom answers the door for our couple, and he lives up to this impression. He's gruff and irritable, berating Emma for being late and ushering her inside with no pleasantries. Here we also meet Tom's son, Tim, a father-son naming convention that isn't confusing at all. Tim is 9 years old and much more receptive to Emma's presence. They chat about Thanksgiving the previous day. Tim and Tom went to Pizza Pete's, one of those arcade restaurant-type places. Tim mentions that he used to play a particular shooting game with his mom, that Tom can't play with him because holding any kind of gun, even a fake one, is a trigger for him.
He gets flashbacks.
What are you telling them? I do not get flashbacks. I remember bad things vividly.
Tom has PTSD from his time in the military. He is very in denial about having PTSD and asserts that the only reason he didn't play the shooting game was because he was at the skee-ball machine winning tickets instead. This exchange is set up for a couple things, the first of which being one of Tom's go-to coping mechanisms, denial. Change is a difficult thing to face, and when possible, Tom tends to deny that it's happened at all. He's not going to admit that his time in the military had a negative effect on him. Flashbacks is too clinical and direct of a term, so he doesn't like using it, stepping around the language instead. He insists he could have played the arcade shooter, he just didn't want to, he was doing something else. This way he doesn't have to face it. This is common behavior for Tom, we're gonna be seeing a lot of it. The other thing this exchange sets up is basically Tom's entire conflict with Tim. He was trying to win tickets specifically to get a prize he thought Tim wanted. Tim, in fact, did not want said prize, he just wanted to play the games for fun. Tim doesn't even like skee-ball, it might have been better if he was at least grinding for tickets on a game Tim liked. Tom spent the holiday at the arcade not actually engaging with Tim because he was focused on getting a toy that Tim didn't even want. And he's about to do it again. Emma cuts in to mediate the tension, trying to keep things civil. Remember, she thinks she was invited over for a belated family Thanksgiving. That's not actually the case. Tom called Emma to babysit. He's leaving to run an errand and apologizes to Emma for calling, thinking that being here is a hassle for her. The possibility that she might want to be here is totally lost on him. Emma was just a no-show relative for years, after all. She hasn't been meaningfully part of his or Tim's lives at all up to this point. He sees no reason to believe she could be making an effort to connect. For all he knows, she's just as distant and unreliable as ever. She's never acted like family before, so he doesn't consider her family now. Both Emma and Tim are frustrated that he's leaving, having hoped this was going to be a family day. Tim's so frustrated that he storms off to his room, and Emma gives up on trying to be pleasant.
Great priorities, Tom. First the tools, then the kid.
I didn't say that.
Well, what are you going to do for his birthday? Leave him at home and take the drill press to Six Flags?
With Tim out of earshot, Tom admits his real errand.
I'm going to the mall to get Tim's Christmas present, okay? It's this new doll everybody's been talking about, this little monster that you tickle.
He intends to arrive at the mall 10 minutes before the doors open, but as Emma and her boy toy point out, this doll is in ridiculously high demand. 10 minutes isn't going to be early enough. Not getting a doll is unthinkable for Tom. Last Christmas was so traumatic for Tim that it's mandatory he gets something he wants this year to make up for it. Tom berates himself for not thinking ahead like Jane would have. He's insecure of his worth in her stead, but still asserts his intention to come back with a doll. If this toy is what Tim wants, Tom's gonna make sure he gets it, no matter what. Speaking of what Tim wants, that's the name of the song Tom launches into here. His first solo number, laying out his motivation with extra clarity. He wants to make Tim happy again. The car crash and losing Jane changed him and changed their relationship, and Tom blames himself.
If there's a God, my God, can you see what you've made and what I took away? I'm scared you blame me for Mom. I'm scared you blame me for your luck.
He's determined to fix it, prove his love for Tim, and make up for his failings. In the song's first verse, he reminisces about before the crash, the happy kid Tim used to be.
He used to like cars, Tonka trucks and ships that could show you the stars. I couldn't hold him still to teach him guitar.
His focus here is material, on toys Tim used to play with, things he tried to get him to engage with. That's his understanding of what makes Tim happy, and he thinks the way to make Tim happy again is another toy, the Wiggly doll. As well-meaning as these intentions are, it's clear from the get-go how misguided he is, how deeply he misunderstands what Tim actually wants. Hell, he's so focused on getting the doll that he's completely oblivious to the fact that he's actively fucking up Tim's holiday. Tim wanted to spend the day with his dad and his Aunt Emma, and Aunt Emma's living sweater. That's literally it. But Tom can't comprehend that being enough. He has to do something more, something to prove himself. He needs a tool to fix things. The Wiggly doll is a bandage he needs to stick on his relationship with Tim. It's not even about the gesture, it's about the thing. And because he's convinced this is what they need, he's unintentionally pushing Tim further away. Not just Tim either, he's pushing Emma away too. Emma's motivation to bond comes from her regrets over being distant and missing out on her sister's life. She's also trying to make up for her own failings by being present and available. She's accepting invitations she never would have accepted before, trying to build bonds with the family Jane left behind. Tom, stuck on her prior reputation as unreliable, mistrusts her and is unwilling to accept her into his life in a meaningful way. It's too hard to believe she could be trying to change. Too risky, not even worth potential reward. To him, she's a last resort babysitter at best. He leaves Tim with her, missing out on an entire day to connect with either one. Speaking of connections, at the mall, Tom runs into Lex Foster, stock girl at Toy Zone and former student of his. Tom used to teach shop class at Hatchetfield High and was Lex's favorite teacher. She's a troubled teen, and Tom's class, and by implication his support, was the only thing keeping her GPA up and motivating her to stay in school. Tom is pretty clearly the only positive adult figure in Lex's life. They've got that mentor-student dynamic going on. He stopped teaching when Jane died, and without him, Lex flunked and dropped out of school. Lex is pretty bitter and basically blames him for her failure, and Tom doesn't feel great about leaving her behind, but, you know, the trauma. He had his reasons. The implications of Tom and Lex's relationship give a glimpse of Tom prior to the crash. We know that he was once perfectly capable of connection, of being a present, positive mentor figure for the students in his care. that he's the kind of teacher who bonds with the problem students. And it's not that he intentionally closed himself off when Jane died. He clearly still cares about Lex, just like he cares about Tim. He just can't navigate these relationships the way he used to. Their dynamics are different now. His concern over Lex's choices comes off as judgmental, and when he finds out she's working at Toy Zone, the toy store where the Wiggly dolls are being sold, he tries to get her to put one of the dolls aside for him.
Well, you know, I could, but that would be violating company policy, and everyone's telling me to be more responsible lately, so I'm gonna go with them on this one.
It's definitely more out of bitterness than actual moral obligation, seeing as Lex steals one of the dolls for herself literally minutes later. And I get that. It's shitty of Tom to ask her for this. He used to be a supportive mentor for her, someone helping her try to be more responsible, and now after he's been gone dealing with his own problems, he's basically trying to use their bond for his own means. He got here late. Lex doesn't owe him any favors. Tom heads off stage for a bit while we meet some new characters. Lex, as mentioned, steals a doll, which she intends to sell to fund her plans to skip town with her boyfriend and her little sister. She hides the doll in her backpack and gives it to her sister Hannah to carry for the day. Remember that, it's gonna be relevant. Let's jump ahead to when Tom gets in line at the toy store. It's a long line full of people who've been waiting all night. Tom fumbles his way near the front and offers a woman $20 for her spot in line. The woman turns around, and it turns out they know each other. This is Becky Barnes, and she and Tom were high school sweethearts. The line busts into a gossipy little song about Tom and Becky, evidently seeing each other for the first time in years, and within the song, their reunion is awkward but pleasant.
I missed you.
What did she say? They still love each other.
They're happy to see each other. Their past together is a positive memory rather than something that ended badly. Finally, he had a positive interaction. 1 out of 5. Look at him go. Toy Zone opens, and owner Frank Priceley sings a banger of a song that sums up the anti-capitalist themes of the show pretty well. In the context of Tom, I'd like to point out this line because it is in fact his entire motivation.
Did you know if you spend money, your kids will love you, baby?
The transactions begin, and the kickoff for what will build into rioting is living man-child brony stereotype Sherman Young, first in line, who intends to buy every Wiggly doll in the store, thus fucking over everyone in line behind him. The other shoppers are understandably not having that, and tensions build fast. Tom is pretty quiet for this sequence, most of the conflict reserved for Sherman, soon-to-be villain Linda Monroe, and the ensemble shoppers. The only time Tom speaks in this sequence is when one of the other shoppers manhandles Lex.
Everyone back in line!
The fuck up! Whoa! Get your hands off her! Fuck you!
He's not engaging in the building frenzy, he only speaks up to try and protect her. The eventual riot breaks out in the form of a musical number, Feast or Famine, and Tom does get into the fray here. Everyone does. At the start of the song, Tom snatches a doll from Kurt Mega Shopper. Not violently, he just comes up behind him and grabs it. Then James Tolbert Shopper grabs the doll from Tom. The next time he's visible in the crowd is when real fights start breaking out. He's huddled off to the side with Becky, shielding her from the action, and both of them reacting with shock. He and Becky jump back into the fray as all the shoppers converge around one of the dolls, and they all circle Frank during the bridge as the frenzy reaches a boiling point. The most physical Tom gets is at the end of the song when he grabs Frank so Becky can take the doll. The button of the number has Becky with the doll, and all the rioters, Tom included, surrounding her reaching for it.
Feast or famine!
The Wiggly dolls incite a sort of mania. People are inexplicably drawn to the doll. They find themselves needing it, desperately, to the point it clouds their judgment, heightens their aggression, and results in riots like this. We'll go on to see this isn't just happening in Hatchetfield, it's all over the country. Average folks across the United States will fight dirty to get their hands on one of these things. Psh, how pathetic. Imagine seeing one of those silly little guys and wanting one that bad. I mean, I guess the Wiggly doll's design is a little delightfully charming, but it's not that big a deal. It's not like I was unreasonably upset when StarKid made the actual dolls available to buy and the first round of sales went live and sold out while I was sleeping. Sure, I bought one during the second sale, but I'm normal about it. He's just a cute doll. A cute, fuzzy, huggable doll. I don't have to justify myself to you. What do you care if I love and cherish my adorable, precious Wiggly? You want to take him from me or something? I'll kill you! A few years ago, I did a live read of Black Friday with a bunch of my friends where I played the president, and, this part?
Morris, give me that cock-sucking, motherfucking
cockadoodle doll! Yeah, that wasn't acting. What Tom's part in the rising tension in line and the feast or famine sequence shows us is that at this point in the show, while he is under the spell of the dolls, he's not as far gone as he could be. He wants one, and it's clouding his judgment, but he's not to the point of causing a scene or getting violent. He gets swept up in the frenzy, and he grabs Frank, yeah, but other people are punching and kicking and strangling each other, so it's safe to say neither Tom nor Becky have gone all the way off the deep end quite yet. When we see him and Becky again after Feast or Famine, Becky still has her doll. A pair of nearby rioters have just attacked and beaten Lex's boyfriend Ethan, thinking he had a doll, and now they've got their sights on Becky. They attack her, and Tom scares them off. Ethan's in dire straits on the ground, and Tom and Becky try to tend to him. He dies, our first death of the show, the real turning point of the riots. People aren't just getting scrappy, they're killing each other for these dolls. Tom refuses to leave the mall even after the tides turn, though, having not gotten a Wiggly for himself. He is letting Becky keep hers. Other rioters are attacking anyone they think might have a doll, and not only has Tom not tried to take Becky's, he protects her from the others. Again, not too far gone yet, but definitely clouded. Another rioter advances on Becky, and when Tom steps in to protect her, he gets stabbed. The dude in a rush takes Becky's doll, and she's left to tend to Tom, who's passed out. That's the last we see of them in Act 1. Act 2 opens with a hilariously jarring decom-style musical number.
Death the halls of Northville High, 'tis the season of rock and rollin'.
This bit is diegetic. It's part of the movie playing at the mall's Cineplex, where Becky dragged Tom to hide and tend to him after he was stabbed. She stitched up his wound, and now he's awake, and they're hunkered down at the seats they favored back in high school, sheltered from the riots while the world's worst Christmas movie blasts on the theater screen. Becky says the remaining shoppers who didn't get their hands on a Wiggly during the riots have barricaded the mall, trapping everyone inside, convinced that there are more dolls somewhere to be found.
Are there?
I don't know, Tom.
He still intends to find one, if it's possible, and gets up to start looking. Becky tries to stop him, given he was stabbed, and he yells at her. He apologizes when she flinches, but that show of aggression is evidence he's slipping deeper into the spell, starting to prioritize the doll over the person he's been protecting up till now. Calming down a little, Tom confides his fears in Becky, that he needs this doll so badly to make things up to Tim because the night of the car crash, he was driving.
If she'd been driving, she would have seen the other car sliding into the intersection. She would have stopped.
It was his fault. He wasn't perceptive enough, quick enough to prevent it. He got Jane killed. He destroyed his family. He ruined Tim's life. In response, Becky confides in Tom about what she went through in the years since they broke up. Earlier in the show, when Becky was first introduced in line, we learned through her interactions with Linda Monroe that she was in an abusive marriage. Her ex-husband Stanley physically abused her until, as far as everyone in town knows, he got bored and left her for another woman in Clivesdale. Now we hear the real story from Becky herself. She wanted to go to Jane's funeral, and Stanley wouldn't let her.
He said he'd rather see me dead than hanging around Tom Houston again.
She just wanted to pay her respects, be there for someone she still cared about in his time of need, and Stanley refused her that freedom. This was Becky's breaking point after the years of abuse he'd put her through, and that night when he attacked her, she fought back. He chased her into the woods with a knife, and Becky got the upper hand.
It's funny. Stanley's the one that made me go to nursing school. That's why I knew where his femoral artery was.
She left him for dead in the woods, and although she isn't actually sure if he died or is still out there somewhere, she hopes he's dead. She struggles with these feelings, though, and tells Tom he has to forgive himself for the accident.
'Cause if you don't, how's anyone ever gonna forgive me?
The point of this conversation is for Tom and Becky to share their respective trauma and have them reach an emotional understanding of seeing they both fear themselves unforgivable, both for things neither should be condemned for. Emotions having built to the point they're too strong for talking, Tom and Becky launch into their romantic duet, Take Me Back. The song is about Tom and Becky finding comfort from their respective traumas in their shared past. They were happy back in high school when they were together and things were simpler. They fantasize about returning to that time and the idea of healing each other from present pain with their past love. Maybe in some other reality where they never broke up, they didn't have to experience that pain, so maybe if they come back together in this reality, the pain will stop. Tom has the first verse and comforts Becky by telling her she hasn't changed.
You look just the same as I always remember.
What she's been through and what she did doesn't affect how he sees her. She's still the same girl he loved in high school, that he's always loved, really. There's nothing she needs to be forgiven for. To him, she's no different than how she was back then. Becky, in the second verse, contrasts this by telling Tom he has changed.
The light has left your eyes, something has changed, then you were way more put together.
He's different now, he's sadder, he's a wreck. But the fact he's changed doesn't matter to her. She still loves him. She loved who he was in high school, and she loves who he is now, even though they're different people.
Tom, if you asked me, I'd still go to prom with you.
The way their verses contrast and complement each other highlights a difference in perspective between Tom and Becky that's really interesting. Tom's focus is on things being unchanged, claiming Becky is the same as she always was, that in their alternate reality they're a family like the family he had with Jane. Becky's focus is on things being different in the sense that the circumstances have changed, but her feelings haven't. Her lack of hesitance to admit that Tom's fallen apart. Her idea of an alternate reality being just the two of them. Tom is someone who does not want to accept change. He wants to believe he can go backwards to before the change happened and fix it so things can stay the same as they were. Becky, on the other hand, accepts change openly. She's eager to move forward and adapt as necessary, leaving the worst of the past as far behind her as possible. They balance each other out in this way, both saying what the other needs to hear. Becky needs to know that what she went through didn't change her like she worries it did. Knowing what happened to her and what she had to do to free herself from her abuser didn't change her in Tom's eyes. She's not a monster for fighting back. To him, she's the same as she ever was, and he loves her the same. And Tom needs to know that, yeah, he is different now. He's a mess, he's broken, but he's just as worthy of love as he was back in high school. Becky does see him differently, but not in a bad way. He's changed, but her love for him hasn't. They find that comfort they're craving in each other's arms, and in the throes of passion and emotions running high, they make love right there in the theater with the shitty Christmas movie still blasting.
This is the best movie ever!
Focus shifts away from Tom and Becky for a while. People do stuff, and Linda sings a song about how she's a cult prophet now, and we circle back to them when they've left the Cineplex to wander the mall again. They bump into Hannah Foster, carrying the Wiggly doll that Lex hid with her. That is the last doll left in the mall. Now, I think part of what's kept Tom and Becky from falling off the deep end until now was seeing each other again. They'd been apart for years, and always on some level yearned for each other. Being together again provided a comfort that kept them somewhat balanced in comparison to the other shoppers, but now they've fully indulged in that comfort, and the tension between them has released, and it wasn't enough. Their problems aren't fixed. The fantasy was nice, but being together isn't the instant remedy they both want it to be. But Hannah is holding something very powerful, something that's digging inside Tom and Becky's heads and calling for them, promising that it is that instant remedy. They can't complete each other, but this thing can. And boy is it tempting. They want that doll. They need that doll. I like this sequence a lot. I personally think here and the initial riots are where the show makes the best use of its premise and delivers on what I at least wanted from it. Tom and Becky hit the same level of manic the other shoppers have been at since the word go, and it's really great. Dylan Saunders and Kim Whalen did a great job pushing their performances into that hazy, obsessive state. I love their falsely friendly, sugary sweet delivery when they talk to Hannah, trying to draw her in.
You can trust us. We're good people.
Why are you backing away from me, kid? I'm not gonna hurt you.
It's a really effective contrast to the overt aggression of the other shoppers, that Tom and Becky encounter a child and don't jump straight to trying to hurt her. Tom is a teacher and Becky is a pediatric nurse. They're both people kids should be able to trust, and they want Hannah to trust them. They're trying to manipulate their positions as trusted community figures, as good people, to get Hannah to comply, because she has something they want. It's especially unnerving because Tom and Becky aren't bad people either. They're desperate and misguided. Hannah knows this. She's a smart kid with a deeper understanding of what's going on. She has a sort of psychic clairvoyant ability and an unseen powerful friend to guide her. Her scene right before Tom and Becky entered had her speaking directly to Wiggly himself, the actual entity behind the dolls. A god beyond space, the dolls are an extension of the real Wiggly's power, part of a grander scheme of his to gain worshippers to do his bidding. Hannah knows the power the dolls have, and that Tom and Becky are not in their right minds at the moment. She's not going to trust them, and she's not going to let them have the doll. When Hannah's not so receptive to the friendly approach, Tom gets frustrated and aggressive. He threatens and yells at her, scaring her away, and Becky reels him back into the honey trap method.
You don't scream at a child, it frightens them. You lure them in delicately, and you put them to sleep.
They hunt her down in a really fun and eerie musical number.
Do you want to play with me, lovely girl, lovely girl?
I love Do You Want to Play, it's great. At the end of the sequence, Tom grabs Hannah and holds her down so Becky can knock her out with the nap time juice, but Becky accidentally sticks herself instead. She collapses on top of Hannah and Tom grabs the Wiggly doll. He's far gone enough now that the doll is all he cares about, taking his chance to escape with it and ditching Becky with no hesitation. Becky and Hannah get grabbed by rioters turned worshippers, who've been looking for Hannah because they knew she had a doll. Tom escapes and heads for the exit, doll in hand, ready to get home to his son. More stuff happens. Knockoff Randall Flagg sings a song to the president in the Shadow Realm, and Lex almost gets strangled by a brony, but the ghost of a military general gives her his gun, which she grabs from the Shadow Realm with her magic powers, and she escapes. No, I will not be explaining any of that. Go watch the musical. This guy tasks Lex with stopping the mall cult from summoning Wiggly into their world. He tells her,
"There is a warrior of light trapped in a deep sleep. Wake the warrior, kill the prophet, save the world."
So Lex heads off to find Tom. Spoiler alert, Tom is not actually the Warrior of Light, but Lex thinks he is, and that speaks volumes about their relationship. Lex barely has any idea what's going on right now. She just knows she needs the help of a good person to stop the end of the world. A good person who might be a little lost right now. And the person she thinks of is Tom, her favorite teacher, even though he let her down. Lex stops Tom before he can leave the mall and gives him a reality check to break him from Wiggly's spell. He's so sure that Tim wants this doll to the point it's altering his memories. Lex knows what kids are into, though, and she hasn't seen a single kid show interest in Wiggly. At most, kids are scared of it. Only adults are interested in the doll, adults who think buying it will somehow fix their broken lives. Adults like you, Tom! Tom reflects through his second solo number, If I Fail You. He's realizing that Tim probably never wanted the doll, that his focus on it as what he thought Tim wanted has been blinding him to reality, that he is actively failing Tim right this second by being here at the mall and not at home with him. In one verse he reflects on a childhood memory with his own father, how once on a day out he wanted a toy gun and his dad didn't get him what he wanted.
He got me a cheaper dagger, but deep down it didn't matter. I was with him. Where's Tim?
Maybe in the moment he was disappointed that he didn't get what he asked for, but he remembers that day fondly because the stuff was never the important thing. It was the time he spent with his dad. This kind of anti-consumerism moral is pretty well-tread territory, especially for holiday-adjacent stories. Black Friday elevates it by directly criticizing capitalism and corporate marketing strategies that prey on people's vulnerabilities, particularly in the United States. The more helpless and desperate people feel as circumstances get worse and worse around them, the more money they'll spend in an effort to feel whole, the easier they are to market to. The song Made in America is entirely about this. Wiggly's scheme is turning himself into a marketable plush doll for a reason. He's taking advantage of the market system to gain worshippers. He lures in broken people with the promise that buying a doll will fix their lives, and the more desperate and lost in the spell they become, they forget what they really wanted it for until all that matters is their devotion to Wiggly. Buying a doll starts as a step towards fulfillment. Then the doll becomes the end goal, the thing that will provide fulfillment. At that point, the line blurs. Wiggly himself is who will provide fulfillment. Bing, bang, boom, you've got a devoted servant to this god creature. That's what happens to Linda Monroe. She had a goal very similar to Tom's at the start of the story. She was in line to get dolls for her sons. 4 dolls, one for each of her beautiful blonde boys. Back in Feast or Famine, she and Tom even share the line,
My family will love me.
because they're both after the same thing, the love of their children through transactional gift-giving. Tom and Linda are kind of foils in this show. First of all, it's a small thing, but I think it's interesting. Remember how Tom tried to bribe his way into the line back in Act 1? Linda arrived a little earlier than him and successfully bribed her way in. We don't get a number, but it's definitely a lot of money she offers this guy. She doesn't care enough to get there any earlier, and she's privileged enough to be confident that she can make things work out for her. When Tom tries to bribe Becky, he only offers $20, and he's more frantic and even a little apologetic about it. He doesn't necessarily think that he's entitled to a closer spot, he's just unprepared and desperate. Back to them and their kids, Linda speaks pretty dismissively about her children. She calls herself a good mother, but it's performative. She wants her boys to love her, but her love for them is really only superficial. We only hear one of their names in this show, and even then she's not exactly being warm towards him.
I don't care if River has to use the bathroom. He can hold it like a man.
In contrast, Tom undoubtedly loves Tim with all his heart. There are 2 entire songs about it. The big thing Tom wants is for Tim to be happy. It's relatively unselfish. Dude loves his kid. Linda, in her storyline, is chosen as Wiggly's prophet, tasked with leading his worshippers and summoning him into this world. Because her understanding of love is a one-way transaction where she receives without giving, she's easy to manipulate for Wiggly's needs. Linda doesn't want to be loved, she wants to be worshipped, and as Wiggly's prophet, she can be. After that point, she mentions wanting 4 dolls once, but she's basically forgotten she wanted them for her kids. It's not about them anymore. She needs the doll as a vessel. It's about serving Wiggly now. Tom's motivations are manipulated too, but he's not just looking to receive Tim's love. He's trying to express his own. He wants to give and receive. That distinction is why Linda is an ideal prophet and loses herself in devotion to Wiggly, and Tom is able to snap out of it. Tom comes to understand that Wiggly isn't going to fix his life. He doesn't need empty, mindless fulfillment from serving Wiggly. He needs to face the pain and changes in his life and be with his son. And Tim doesn't need a toy to turn him back into the happy kid he was before his mom died. He needs his dad to come home and stop leaving him alone so they can grow through this together. Tom renounces Wiggly and takes Lex's gun because I guess his PTSD is cured now. Okay? Tom and Lex confront Linda and her cult. Tom holds Linda at gunpoint, but he's not strong enough to fend off her God-given prophet superstrength, so she escapes him and snatches the doll from Lex, and she and her cult sing a song about building a portal for Wiggly. Construction is cancelled, though, because Becky wakes up from her accidentally self-induced sedation, and she has the gun now. She's the Warrior of Light, and she shoots Linda right in the head, destroying the cult and their plans. Lex lights the last Wiggly doll on fire, and leaves it with the cultists where the fire spreads through the whole mall. Tom, Becky, Lex, and Hannah escape the mall just in time for Emma to pull up. She and her pet boy are here to get Tom, having watched coverage of the escalating riots until the news went out. Tim's waiting in the car, and they're ready to blow this joint. In addition to understanding what Tim really needs, Tom understands what he needs now too, and what the other person in his family he's been neglecting needs. The no-show relative who, today, took full responsibility caring for his son, to the point of being prepared to care for him permanently.
We were gonna take Tim, get out of town, but he wouldn't let us. All he wanted was you.
And made it here to get Tom when she knew he was in danger. Sure, it took convincing, but maybe she's not so unreliable after all. Tom's ready to open up and really welcome Emma into their family, to put their differences and old grudges aside and grieve and bond with her as well as with Tim. She won't just be a last resort babysitter anymore. Tom wants Emma to be part of his life. He needs that. Their relationship is strained, and that's not an easy fix, but the fact that he's ready to open up to her shows that he's willing to face the parts of recovery and repair that will be hard. Tom and Emma have not directly interacted in a Hatchetfield installment since this, which is fine, and I'm not bitter about it at all. The whole group decides to evacuate somewhere safe, and it's nearly midnight. Hannah and the ensemble sing our excellently eerie and foreboding final song, which ends with a countdown to midnight.
5,
3.
2.
What if tomorrow?
So, general consensus on this ending: Hatchetfield got nuked. Everyone on screen just died. This happens because of the storyline following the President of the United States, which I am not going to explain. Go watch the musical. The big takeaway of this ending for my purposes is that no matter what Tom or any of the other shoppers did, there was no way they could have prevented this. They stopped Wiggly from being summoned, but they had no control or awareness of what their government was doing in the meantime, and even though they had nothing to do with it, they suffer the consequences. They are all casualties of a situation much bigger than them, and they weren't even aware of it. In our individual case, Tom had his much-needed epiphany. He realized what he'd been doing wrong and pledged that he would do better. He would be there for Tim, the way Tim actually needed. He would let Emma into his life. What he didn't know was that it was already too late. When Tim stormed off that morning, that was the last time Tom would ever see him. By no fault of Tom's own, those reparations will never happen. He missed the last chance he'd ever have for a day with his family. Because he was stuck so long in his isolation, his misguided understanding of what he and his son needed, he missed his window. If he'd had this realization just a day or two earlier, at least he would have had that last day. But he didn't. Part 2. Maybe he doesn't want to be happy. Other than Black Friday, Tom has appeared in 3 Nightmare Time stories, 2 cameo appearances and 1 other starring role. The cameos are very small, so I'll just quickly cover them now. He's at Emma's wedding in Forever and Always, where she takes a jab at him and her vows. It's nice to see they're apparently on good enough terms for that. I'd love to see them actually interact again someday. Tom also appears in Yellow Jacket, teaching shop class again. He shuts down the kids bullying Hannah, and when he talks to her about her project, we see him as an attentive, engaged teacher. He's very kind and warm towards Hannah, and in their conversation reminisces fondly about when he taught Lex. He uses a shelf that Lex made in his classroom, and he's pretty sentimental about it. It seems like a paternal sort of fondness he feels for the Foster sisters, and it's sweet. He cares a lot about them both. Speaking of Lex, now we're going to talk about the story Jane's a Car, which opens on Lex and her boyfriend Ethan. They're in Ethan's dad's auto body shop, Ethan fixing up Tom's car, a 1986 Fox body Mustang. It's the car he was driving when the accident happened, when Jane died. As you may have guessed from the title, this is a ghost story, and Jane's soul is inhabiting this car. The characters don't know that yet, though, so shh, don't tell them. The first hint of Jane's presence is at the very start. The car's tape deck turns on by itself while Lex is sitting inside. Ethan gets it to shut off, and their conversation gives us a little context. Tom specifically wants the car exactly how it was before the crash, and he's sunk a lot of money into this restoration. We've discussed Tom's aversion to facing change, and this story brings that trait to the forefront. Here we see a new manifestation of his struggle to deal with change as it relates to his trauma, and his coping method of trying to pretend nothing is different. His belief that going back to the best of his abilities is the solution. Ethan doesn't understand this line of thinking. He thinks Tom would be happier just buying a new car and moving on. Lex has a big old soft spot for Tom, and she's a little more sympathetic.
Maybe he doesn't want to be happy. Maybe he doesn't want to forget her.
Knowing that Tom generally blames himself for Jane's death, his choice to restore the car feels like an unhealthy spin on a keepsake. It isn't just that he wants to hold on to the memory of her, he wants to live in the memory, to the point it's actively preventing him from living his life and moving on, because he thinks it's his fault. He's punishing himself, and he'll be punishing himself for the duration of this story. When Ethan and Lex test the Mustang's engine, it puts itself in drive, lurches forward, and nearly crushes Ethan before Lex slams on the brakes. In case we were at all unsure what kind of spirit Jane was going to manifest as here, she's not going to be super friendly. From that opening, we transition to Tom at Pizza Pete's with Tim. Tom is on edge, and the arcade games around them aren't helping. The shooter games and car crash games are triggering him, and he is, as expected, reluctant to admit it. Tim's a good kid, though. He's observant and considerate of his dad's needs, and offers to switch sides at the table so Tom doesn't have to look at the big kid games.
You know what? Yeah, let's switch sides, huh?
They switch.
Tom's not just nervous because of the games, though. They're here waiting for Becky. However they reconnected in this timeline isn't something we're privy to, but it's not important. They're seeing each other again, and Tom wants her to meet Tim. He's reluctant to label their relationship as romantic, though.
You mean your girlfriend?
No, she's a girl, but we're old friends.
Who does that remind me of? Becky arrives, excited to meet Tim. Something I really like about this story is that it doesn't take the well-trod path of Tim being bitter and unreceptive towards Becky. It's an easy conflict to have a kid who's lost a parent feel that their remaining parent's new partner is intruding on the family, trying to replace the deceased, that kind of thing. It's not a bad route to take for a story, but it's nice that this isn't the case for Tim. He's not hesitant at all to bond with Becky. He's glad to meet her, and he likes seeing his dad happy. As soon as Becky arrives, he pulls her to play his favorite arcade game with him, the zombie shooting one. Tom watches them play, glad to see Tim happy and the two of them getting along. That night, the three of them are back home watching a movie, and Tim's fallen asleep on Becky's shoulder. It's a sweet domestic little scene. They're forming a new kind of dynamic with Becky in their lives, becoming part of their family. As much as Tom wants her there, though, he's still hesitant to really let it happen. He puts Tim to bed and tells him Becky's about to leave, even though Tim wouldn't mind if she stayed. He offers Becky an out to go home, even though she wants to stay.
If you stay, you'll be here when Tim wakes up, and he'll start thinking of you in a certain way. I don't want to put that on you if you're not ready.
Becky is entirely prepared to be part of this dynamic. She's out of her abusive marriage and she's running towards the future. She knows what she wants and what will make her happy, and she's not interested in hesitating. Tom is the one who's not ready. He wants Becky around. He recognizes that Tim is happy and comfortable with her, and he is happy with her here. It's his guilt holding him back. What does it mean if he can move on and be happy without Jane when it's his fault she died? Does he really deserve that? He can't help that instinct to pull back, and he's projecting his own hesitations on Becky and Tim. Becky assures him that she wants to be here, and he's receptive. He wants her to stay too, so she does. It's a step forward for him. He is entirely capable of letting his guilt go and accepting this change. It might take a little time and work, but his loved ones want him to be happy, and he wants the same for them, so it's doable. A few days later, Tony Green has finished restoring the old Mustang, and Tom goes to pick it up. The restoration has been 1.5 years in the works, and Tom is very affected seeing the car again. Tony offers to hook Tom up with a buyer who collects vintage cars if taking the Mustang back might be too much for him with all the baggage. Tom refuses. Jane loved the Mustang. He can't let it go. He doesn't want it back for himself. He wants it back out of obligation to her. He takes Tim to school in the Mustang. They have very different opinions on having the car back. Tom sees it as a positive, naturally, and tells Tim maybe when he's older the Mustang will be his. Tim is not super stoked to be back in this car and is not interested in inheriting it one day. Which is fair, you know? He doesn't associate good memories with the car like his dad does. He doesn't find it comforting that it's been fixed. He'd rather take the bus back home than be picked up in the Mustang again. When Tim gets out, the car's horn honks on its own, reminding him to come back and grab his lunch. That's Jane taking care of her boy. Tom just figures he must have honked the horn and forgotten. As he's on the way back home, a pop song Jane used to like comes on the radio. Tom fondly reminisces for a moment, but he's not a fan of this song and switches stations to something else. This is also genuinely another positive step for him, I think, to hear something that reminds him of Jane but not feel obligated to keep listening to something he doesn't like. The stereo then flips back to Jane's song. It's a clever bit of foreshadowing. Jane's upcoming return will hold him back from moving on in a healthy way. In the garage, on his way into the house, he hears Jane's voice. That's 3 sequential strange happenings, so the next day, Tom heads to the bookstore. He's worried that he's hallucinating, so he's looking to do some research on flashbacks. Look at him moving past his denial. Proud of you, Tommy Salami. He runs into Becky, there to pick up books for the kids at the hospital. She's a little disappointed to find out that Tom is thinking about Jane and worries it might be her fault from the other night, maybe worrying she's pushing him too hard. Tom says it's only a passing thought, though, so Becky feels comfortable to try and make plans for later with him and Tim. He shoots her down. Internally, he clearly doesn't feel right trying to navigate this new dynamic when Jane is on his mind. Externally, he says since he just got the Mustang back, he needs to clean out the garage to make 2 cars fit. Becky offers to help, but again, Tom says no. I like this exchange a lot. It's a good metaphor. Tom has 2 cars that he needs to make fit in his garage. Becky wants to help. She wants to put in the necessary work and support him how he needs so she can be part of his life. She wants her current place in Tom's life to coexist with his past with Jane. She's not trying to push him to forget Jane. She knows that love and grief will always be part of him, but she doesn't want to play second fiddle to Jane's memory either. She wants to help him make both cars fit. Do you see what I'm getting at? Becky and Jane are the cars, and the garage is Tom's heart. Tom doesn't want Becky's help. He sees it as a burden for her, something she doesn't need to deal with.
There's a bunch of shit in there, Becky. You don't want to go through all that shit.
He's resistant to letting his present with Becky coexist with his past with Jane. As much as he wants this present, that guilt and fear that he's dishonoring Jane if he lets himself move on and love Becky has him in a chokehold. And even though Becky wants to help and support him, he doesn't want her to have to deal with the mess in his heart. He's afraid to let her go through all that shit. Surely she doesn't want that. But she does, dipshit. Becky gets the hint and backs off, still suggesting they make plans for the weekend. She's trying to give him the space and time he needs while also not letting him push her away. Becky Barnes, I am so sorry for what's gonna happen to you, sweetheart. Tom goes home, and after a night of self-reflection, decides he can't go on with how he's been living. He starts taking steps to move forward. He gathers Jane's things into boxes, not to get rid of, to store in the garage, and he leaves Tony a voicemail considering the offer to sell the Mustang. He's been wallowing, leaving Jane's things around the house like nothing's changed, like he's waiting for her to come back. Storing her things away as keepsakes and making room for new memories in the house is a good step. Opening a conversation about selling the Mustang is a good step. Tom is setting himself on a good, healthy path here.
I thought you missed me, Tom.
Scratch that. Here's Janie. And how did her soul end up in the car? Fortunately, she explains. The night of the crash, Jane was playing the audio diary of one of her psychiatry patients in which he read out a spell from a spell book he'd found. Because the spell was playing when they were hit by the other car, Jane's soul got knocked from her body and into the Mustang, and she's been stuck like this at the auto shop this whole time. She was trying to be subtle and avoid startling Tom, but the idea of him selling the car was too much for her. Now, Jane is a little complicated to talk about because this story is the only time she's appeared in the series thus far. In prior installments, her presence was looming grief over the two characters most affected by her, Tom and Emma. The only impression we had of her was word of mouth. Both Tom and Emma put Jane up on a pedestal.
She was the good one.
Jane would have had all this worked out.
They both consider themselves somewhat inadequate compared to her. She was organized, she was a meticulous planner, she always knew what she was doing, and she always did it right. The first glimpse we got of the less idealized side of Jane was in Black Friday, this line in If I Fail You.
She used to like bars. She liked to loosen me up just to get at my heart. She'd poke at each of my wounds to see what I'd say.
This points to a manipulative streak. It sounds like she had a habit of treating Tom a little more like an experiment than a person, knocking his guard down and playing with his emotions so she could psychoanalyze him. Jane Zakar continues to show us a pretty damn negative side of Jane. She's the antagonist of this story, and she is not kind to Tom. There's inherent baggage to take into account. She went through some magic fuck shit, her soul is trapped in something that's not a human body, so she's experiencing body dysmorphia. She spent a year and a half unable to go anywhere with no control over what was happening, in addition to being separated from her husband and son. All of that would fuck anyone up. Jane's not gonna be in her right mind here. Brushing all her shitty behavior off as her being influenced by evil magic makes everything we see of her dynamic with Tom way less interesting, though, so while we are going to be nuanced and take the unique circumstances into account, we're not going to absolve her entirely either. Okay? Okay. So Jane basically starts guilt-tripping Tom right out the gate. She takes the thought of selling the car as a personal insult. Tom immediately backpedals, saying he was only curious what the buyer might pay.
So, there's a price tag on all of those memories? On our life together? On me?
Jane is doubting her worth to Tom if he's willing to sell the car that was part of so many memories in their relationship. She's also directly confirming his own fears. He was right in all his hesitations, in keeping his iron grip on the past. He took a step forward, and now Jane's come back and she's upset with him. The real salt in the wound is when he tries to ask how this happened.
You don't pay attention to anything, do you? No wonder we crashed.
Literal minutes after re-entering his life, Jane directly blames Tom for the accident. She confirms his guilt. Without a shadow of a doubt now, her death, her being stuck as a car, is Tom's fault. Again, she's not in the best state of mind right now. She's frustrated and volatile, and people say fucked up shit when they're volatile. Who's to say if she really means it? But she still said it, and it sucks. That sucks, Jane. It's reasonable that after hearing that, and after Jane expresses how lonely and hurt she's been, Tom is willing to do whatever she asks to appease her, including keeping this a secret from Tim. Jane doesn't want anyone else to know she's a car, worried of both the public's perception and how the mixed messages regarding her fate would affect Tim, so Tom has to keep the whole thing hush-hush and deal with helping her on his own. Always reliable, though, Jane's got a plan. She takes Tom on a drive downtown to scope out potential new bodies. She wants to find a woman Tom is suitably attracted to and have him run her down while the ritual tape plays so Jane's soul will be transferred into the other woman's body. She wants to kill someone and take their body. I mean, we've all been there. Jane doesn't actually tell Tom her plan, though. She just shoves him into the deep end with zero communication and then gets frustrated with him when he doesn't understand what she wants. He has no idea what her intentions are, so he reasonably gets uncomfortable when she grills him about his opinion on random women.
Come on, Tom. This isn't rocket science. You know, is she your type?
No,
Well, why not?
because she's not you.
Oh, bullshit.
This showcases what I think is a pretty big personality clash that makes Tom and Jane's relationship unhealthy. Jane is a meticulous planner. She has this all worked out and basically expects that it's the natural conclusion anyone should come to in this situation. She shouldn't need to tell Tom what they're doing, he should just be on the same page. Explaining it to him would be a waste of time, he should get it. Tom is not on the same page, though. He doesn't know what's happening. He's not a quick thinker. Things that seem inherently obvious to others take him a little longer to work out, or might be lost on him without further explanation. He wants to help, but Jane's not telling him what she wants from him, so he ends up confused and uncomfortable and walking on eggshells trying to avoid upsetting her. I kinda get the sense this was a regular dynamic for them. Jane getting frustrated when Tom struggled to keep up with her, him tripping over himself trying to avoid her frustration and just making it worse. As a result, Tom feels stupid and incapable, and Jane feels like she's babying him, or maybe even undermined by his inability to keep up. It's not great for either of them. Jane promises she won't get upset if Tom's honest, and her vague goading leads them to settle on a charity canvasser on the beach. Jane likes her earthy vibe, and Tom admits to finding her pretty. Tom, puzzled but obedient, follows the woman at Jane's request. The woman sees him speed up and starts to run, and when Jane tells him to run her down, he panics and swerves, letting her get away. Safe to live another la-di-da-da day. Tom, understandably, doesn't want to kill someone and is weirded out by the idea of Jane inhabiting the body of a random woman. Jane, understandably, is not interested in staying a car and doesn't particularly care about Tom's feelings on the matter. He acquiesces, convinced if this is what he has to do to help her, he'll do it. He'd still prefer to not kill an innocent woman, but they're sort of at an impasse at this point, so they decide to go home and sleep on it. At home, Jane comes up with a new place to scout for bodies, the hospital where Tom's old friend Becky works. Turns out she saw them in the bookstore yesterday, and she's not too pleased. She's feeling insecure about Tom's love for her, if part of him was glad she was gone so he could be with Becky again. Tom denies anything going on with Becky at all, which is a bad move on his part. He's so averse to upsetting her that he resorts to lying to avoid the conflict. That's not the solution you think it is, buddy. Jane is feeling unloved and inhuman. Tom wants to comfort her. She's still his wife. He still loves her. She wants to feel like a person again. She wants her husband's affection. Physical affection.
Make love to me, Tom. Make love to your car.
Let's go!
Now, if you'll all indulge me, I'd like to take a moment to discuss the narrative and character significance of the funny car sex scene. Yes, really. I know this bit's silly, I like to make fun of it too, but it does have merit outside of being silly and uncomfortable. Jane Zakar is, in my opinion, one of the best nightmare times, and I will give it the respect it deserves. It's not like this happens for no reason, you know? It's silly, but it's also a legitimate culmination of the tension between Tom and Jane and their respective anxieties. Jane's been upset with Tom since he found out she was back. She's spent this whole time feeling frustrated and unloved, and Tom's spent this whole time overwhelmed and fumbling to make her happy. This is the first time Jane gives him a clear answer of what she wants. She wants to feel like a woman again, for him to show her he still loves her. She wants to feel like nothing has changed. The thing Tom's been struggling with throughout both this story and Black Friday. This is the first time they've been on the same page. It's the natural conclusion. Unfortunate on many levels, Tim walks into the garage to check on his dad. He got worried when he heard Tom come home, but not into the house. Tom assures that he's fine. In fact, he feels like things are looking up for them both. He suggests they do something fun this weekend to celebrate, the three of them, as a family. Tom is referring to Jane as the third person, but remember, Tim has no fucking idea his mom is back, let alone that she is the car sitting right in front of him. Tim reasonably assumes his dad is referring to Becky as the third person, and he'd be happy to spend a family weekend out with Becky because Becky is great and he likes her. Jane is significantly less happy about this idea. She knows for sure now that Tom was in fact seeing Becky while she was gone. In Tom's defense, he thought Jane was dead, but also he did lie to her about it, so I get why she's upset. This is again a manifestation and confirmation of Tom's fears. It's not a bad thing for a person to end up with somebody else after their spouse has died. Plenty of widows choose not to date again, but it's not a moral failing to love another person after loss. Tom's been struggling with it this whole time, though, and it is a complicated situation. He loves Becky, he never stopped loving her after high school. He loves Jane too, and he had a life and a family with her. He'd probably be hesitant to fully accept a new relationship regardless of who it was with, but because he and Becky have a past, it's extra complicated. He's not falling for somebody new, he's rekindling an old flame. It's understandable to feel guilty, to worry that it's disrespectful to Jane that he's moving on like this. Now Jane is back, and yeah, she's upset. She feels disrespected, and it's not totally unfounded. She's emotionally volatile, and this is a rough situation. I get why she lashes out, to a degree. It's all very complicated, and these two are fucking awful communicators. It is a mess. Jane gets that Tom thought she was dead, and she's willing to forgive him with time, but she expects total compliance from him going forward in exchange. Tom agrees, and Jane takes him to Becky's house so he can break up with her. Tom tries to explain what's going on to Becky, and...
My wife's soul was transferred into a 1986 Fox Body Mustang by some kind of evil magic.
Tom, you're scaring me.
Yeah. He fears he'll have to run someone over for Jane eventually, or that she'll get strong enough to drive the car without him and do it herself. Maybe she's even been able to move on her own the whole time. She's tricky like that.
She just lets me do things that she could probably do better herself. Thinks it helps my self-esteem. Just drives me crazy.
They're so bad for each other, I'm kind of obsessed. Jane seems to believe her own hype. She's the good one, the smart one. She always knows what to do and what's best, both for her and everyone else. And Tom just lets her take control even when he hates it because he believes her hype too. He's surely not smart enough to make the decisions, so he lets Jane drag him around, enabling her more controlling and manipulative tendencies. That's better than upsetting her, after all. Becky's safety is at risk, so although Tom loves her, he tells her to stay away from him. He goes back to Jane, but she won't let the car budge. She fully intends to take Becky's body. This way he can have them both. To her, it's a solution they can both be happy with. Jane won't have to worry about Becky stealing Tom's affections, and Tom won't have to be caught between two women anymore. Becky comes out when the horn honks. She's concerned for Tom's mental health and wants to get him help, but that is not going to happen. Jane starts the tape with the soul transference ritual on it and slams the gas, and, with Tom helpless in the driver's seat, chases Becky into the woods. Becky runs, and Tom tries to get control of the car and stop it, but it's no use. Jane barrels into Becky, running her over, and the car crashes into a tree. Becky wakes up in the hospital with a cop at her bedside. Tom's been arrested, both for his attempt on the charity canvasser's life and for his vehicular assault of Becky, seemingly having suffered a complete mental breakdown. The car's been sent to the dump, also, a relief to Becky. After being released from the hospital, she heads home, or rather, to the Houston home, where Tim is asleep in bed.
Mommy's home.
Haha, that's not Becky, it's Jane! Roll credits! This whole thing is obviously an exploration of Tom's grief, in particular his guilt and anxiety over whether his choices are disrespectful to Jane, what she would think of him now. It's common when we experience loss to consider how our loved ones would think of us, the choices we make, the people we become as we keep living after they're gone. Would they be proud? Would they be ashamed? Hurt? As well as we may think we know someone, after they're gone, there's no way of really knowing what they'd think. To cope with that, some people find themselves basing their actions and choices on what they think their loved one would have wanted. Maybe for self-comfort in the face of guilt, maybe as a means of feeling like they're still here, maybe out of obligation or honoring their legacy. It can be for any reason. The thing about this is that, like any coping mechanism, there's a wide spectrum of effects it can have. It can be a positive source of motivation. A lot of great things have been accomplished by people working out of passion in honor of their late loved ones. It can just as easily be detrimental, though. If the posthumous judgment of the deceased becomes a looming, never-pleased devil on the shoulder, it can become smothering. Hoping to somehow please a person you can never see again, dreading the thought that what you're doing isn't good enough, that if they were here they would be ashamed of you, that can kill someone's motivation entirely. That kind of manifestation can keep people from doing anything at all out of fear of dishonoring their loved one. In the case of the people Jane Perkins is survived by, I think we see both sides of this. Tom and Emma both see themselves as inadequate in comparison to Jane. She was better than both of them, and now that she's gone, they're left to contend with their own shortcomings. Their respective responses to her death are motivated by their grief combined with their own self-loathing. Emma was a letdown to everyone when Jane was alive. She abandoned her family to live her own way, running from connection and commitment for years until Jane's death. Faced with the wasted time and how unfulfilled and lonely her choices had left her, racked with guilt and regret, Emma decided to move back to Hatchetfield. She's here to connect with Jane's family, go to college, and start her own business, a goal she believes Jane would be proud of. This is how she's coping, by trying to make amends and improve herself. Her motivation is driven in part by her idea of what Jane would be proud of, and, something I think is very notable, she's doing it her own way.
I'm gonna start a pot farm.
Did your sister smoke a lot of pot?
No.
Maybe Jane wouldn't be particularly fond of a pot farm specifically, but the idea is that she'd be proud of Emma building family ties, getting her degree, and pursuing a career. That's the important part, that's the part Emma's focused on. How she goes about it is her own business, and that allows her to find motivation without it being stifling, because her own interests and passions are still a priority. Emma's grief spurs her into action. Tom's grief immobilizes him. Tom shut down when Jane died. He left his job, and in Black Friday, Emma describes him as having been shut in for a while. Here in Jane Zakar, we see what looks like his tentative return to average functional living after a year and a half. He's more willing to acknowledge his triggers, and not only has he reconnected with Becky, Emma has, by implication, integrated enough into their family that her boyfriend is considered Tim's uncle. That's great. I love all of that for Tom. He's still hesitant to fully accept his life changing, though, represented by the Mustang. Side note, I think it's also noteworthy that both Becky and Jane have history with the Mustang. Tom's had the car since high school, when he was with Becky, and he had it the whole time he was with Jane, too. Maybe it adds to the garage metaphor I talked about earlier, maybe it functions as a sort of reversal foreshadowing. Becky was Tom's first love, she was familiar with the Mustang first, but Jane was the one he married, and Jane ends up taking Becky's body and destroying the car, destroying both of their places in Tom's life because she can't allow his love for them to coexist. Something along those lines. Tom shows a capacity to move forward healthily, but clings to the restored car out of a need to honor Jane, or rather a fear of dishonoring her. Bringing the Mustang back into the garage ends up being his undoing because he's allowing the specter of Jane's judgment to dictate his life. In the literal story sense, her return and subsequent manipulation smothers Tom into guilt-ridden submission and leaves him helpless to stop her from taking over and shoving him out of the life he was rebuilding after losing her. In the metaphorical sense, Tom's anxiety over dishonoring Jane by moving on smothers him by leaving him beholden to an unpleasable manifestation of her worst judgments, inevitably leading him into a downward spiral where he ruins his own life out of unachievable obligation to Jane. On both levels, Tom ends up unable to think and act for himself, stifled in some way by Jane. Whether a manifestation of his guilt or a warped specter, she proves his fears right. By moving on, he is dishonoring her, disrespecting her, upsetting her, communicating that he doesn't love her anymore. The only way to please her, to find peace in living this way, is total compliance with his fears, erasing Becky from his life and allowing Jane's ghost to smother both himself and Tim, leaving them unable to ever go on living meaningfully, immobilized in grief. Part conclusion. Tom Houston is a man with a lot of love in his heart and a lot of pain he does not know what to do with. His marriage with Jane was not the healthiest, we can wager. He says her ghost car manifestation isn't acting like herself, but I'm inclined to believe that's more regarding how bloodthirsty she is than their interpersonal strife. From what we see of her, Jane is manipulative and belittles Tom's intelligence. Anytime he tries to push back against her, she guilts him or totally steamrolls him, so he doubts his own capabilities, defers to her, and develops an aversion to upsetting her. Jane's death is, of course, massively impactful, and leaves him to contend with himself in her absence. He and Emma both hate what they see in themselves once Jane's shadow is gone. While Emma moves to make a change, Tom retreats into himself, shutting out the rest of the world and wallowing in his guilt and self-loathing. Hatchetfield has a thing for patterns and repetition in the arcs of its characters. We talked about Grace's in my video on her, so what's Tom's? While these things tend to focus on a central character theme, and Tom's is immobility. Tom has two go-tos when it comes to change, ignoring it or trying to restore things to the way they were however he can. He refuses to admit his time in the military changed him. He doesn't recognize or engage with Emma's efforts to change. He wants Tim to be happy like he used to be before the loss, when all it took was the right toy. He wants the Mustang exactly how it was before. Even when he's taking steps forward, he hesitates. He won't call Becky his girlfriend. He resists her efforts to get closer. He resists her bond with Tim. As Jane returns to his life, he pushes Becky away entirely in favor of returning to his wife, but prior to that, it's nice to see how Becky erodes the walls he has up. Her enthusiastic acceptance of the changes in her own life balances out his reluctance, and vice versa. This brings us to the pattern that sprinkles some tragic spice on Tom's character. He is fully capable of moving forward, he just has his epiphanies a moment too late. In Black Friday, the tragedy and horror of the ending comes from the uncontrollable. For pretty much everyone in town, that day was their last day alive, and they had no way of knowing and no way of stopping it. Tom has his entire arc inside the mall. He grows positively. He's let go of the fantasy of buying past happiness back and is on track to go home, bringing Becky with him, and put in the emotional work to make amends with Tim and bond with Emma, and build a new family from the ashes of the loss they've all experienced. Unbeknownst to him, though, he will never see Tim again because they both die at the stroke of midnight. The growth happened, but it didn't happen soon enough to ever come to fruition. In the midst of taking a step forward, he was shoved off a cliff, basically. A very similar thing happens in Jane's a Car. Tom has already started taking steps, and he has a night of introspection that leads him to conclude he wants to fully commit to moving forward. He's already brought the Mustang, and therefore Jane, back into his life by this point, though. It's too late for him to move on. Jane grabs him by the collar and pulls him right back to her, right back to his maladaptive coping mechanisms, right back to guilt and grief-stricken immobility. We can see the good possible in his life if he accepts the changes and lives in the present. A space for Jane in his heart, never forgetting or replacing her, but adapting to the grief. A stronger bond with Tim where he's more focused on building the present than fixing the past. A new relationship with Becky informed by how they've changed, their pasts and presents coexisting as they support each other into the future. A place for Emma in his family, accepting her efforts and letting up on old bitterness, recognizing he may have more in common with her than either of them thought. A new family, unavoidably touched and informed by the past, but not dictated by it. It's all possible, but his constant fatal flaw is that he hesitates just long enough that by the time he decides he wants it and accepts the change necessary to let it happen, it's already too late. In Black Friday, his progress is cut off in its stride. In Jane's a Car, he regresses. If we can learn anything from Tom Houston, it's let yourself live. Love your people while they're here, and don't punish yourself for things you can't control. There's no gain for anyone from deciding you don't deserve to be happy. You do deserve happiness, and you've got to take your chances to be happy when they come. Because if you don't, the horrors will get you, and you'll forever end up as the guy who fucked his car that one time. These are the stories where... She's here on her way to fuck. She's on her way to fuck. Good for her. This exchange is set up for a couple things, the first of which being one of Tom's coconut. Huh? The eventual riot breaks out in the form of a musical number, Feast or Fuck. Feast or Fuck. He dies, our first death of the... Very serious. They're in Ethan's dad's Jesus. Tom fondly reminisces for a moment, but he's not a fan of this song, so whipped cream. What the fuck?